The foot zoning is the most commonly used. It's the way to just kind of help anchor and ground everything and come through. And it's usually a natural, easy one.
If I do foot zoning, could amazing things happen? Like maybe, I don't know. I have no idea, but try it. Like, why not?
Welcome back to the Maeband podcast. I'm Holly.
And I'm Bryan.
And today we have a really special guest with us.
Dun, dun, dun.
Her name is Kristi Corless.
Kristi Corless.
Yes. And if you listened to our story about Bryan's healing, his miraculous healing of his back, Kristi was the foot zoner or spiritual mentor or whatever.
I think I referred to as a spiritual mentor.
Whatever Bryan referred to as that came over and helped him. So
the infamous Kristi Corless.
Yes. So, Kristi, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's my true pleasure to be with you here today.
Yeah. And so that's about when we met Kristi. And so foot zoning, like, did it start with foot zoning? Like, tell us how you got into foot zoning. Tell us about foot zoning.
Yeah. So my journey started just a little bit before that. I had infertility issues. And so I started becoming more open to natural things because our first two children, we had to adopt to get them here. And then I found a lady who started to teach me about some natural things. And little did I know that the current job I had at the time with a skincare and cosmetics company was causing me or kind of promoting the infertility problems I had. And so with her initial help, I was able to stop or discontinue all the products that had the parabens and phenoxyethanol, which were estrogenic preservatives, which were, making my endometriosis and my infertility grow. And so with her help, I got rid of all of those things. I started to learn more about what to avoid. And then I started learning a little bit more about some natural things. But it was a couple years after kind of going down that road, we did end up doing in vitro with my third baby. But when he was in the hospital, 4 weeks old, let's back up one step. My daughter, was about 3.5 and she was excited to see her little brother. I was turned around cooking dinner and she slipped on the tablecloth where he was sitting on top of this table. We never have tablecloths because kids, the tablecloths don't stay on. You just don't. But we had company or something. So my husband was over there. There's a chair in between. She climbed up on the chair, was seeing her little brother. She slipped and pulled kind of him down the tablecloth. Pulled him down onto the tile and he hit his head. Wow. So finally, like 11 years after all this, infertility and finally getting this baby, this 4-week-old, we were rushing him to the hospital. And at that moment, the only thing that I could remember that there was an extra class this lady had taught called Hands-On. And she said, when we hurt ourselves, what is our first instinct to do? We
hurt ourselves. Sorry, I thought you meant like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we pick them up and we hold them, right? Yeah, too, with our kids. But that initial to hold it, right? And so that's what I could remember all the way to the hospital. I'm praying and just holding his head, thinking the energy of my own hand, because she did demonstrate this with a group of us and one person that had some pain. And we just took turns, putting our hands wherever we felt, too. And so that was my first introduction to anything energy work or natural healing, like besides like natural products to support my body and healthy things to eat and do. And so in that moment, we find out that he has a bleed in his brain and my husband goes home to be with the kids and I go in the ambulance to Primary Children's Hospital. And so I never really, during my infertility, questioned why. I just always knew our children would get there how and when they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, I was kind of shocked and a little angry. I never really thought I could be angry with God, but in that moment, because I always thought things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And then this little baby finally gets to us. And I'm like, what good could possibly come from this, right? Yeah. But it was after this, because of that whole week of the scans and the x-rays and the CAT scans, all the radiation, I saw the emotion. I realized that, we were released from the hospital and he was going to be okay. But the question that started to come from this was, is there anything out there that could get this radiation out of his body or help support his body, because I felt from that point on, it would actually be, the bigger problem would be the radiation than the actual bleed in the brain. Yeah. And so with that, I had a thought come into my mind about this lady that was a neighbor of mine who kept talking about this foot zoning thing. And so I called her up and I said, hey, do you know if that foot zoning thing your niece does with you, could that help with getting this radiation out of this 4-week-old little body? You know, and I didn't know very much back then, but I just had that gut feeling. And she said, yeah, sure, call her. And interestingly enough, that niece was about to have a baby, so she couldn't zone my baby. But I have a brother that passed away when I was 4, and his high school English teacher was a foot zoner. She referred me to Eleanor
you never
Olson.
told me that.
Wow.
Eleanor Olson, yeah. So in that moment, she said, hey, call Eleanor Olson. And I'm like, I wonder if this is the same Eleanor Olson, because my family always talked about what an amazing teacher she was to a few of them. And so then week by week, I would go to her house and she would zone my little baby, and she would talk about my brother and how awesome he was. He died when I was 4.5, he was 19. So anyways, that's what got me into foot zoning. And I started to think, if this can help physically with things like getting radiation out with chemicals and things like that. And then she talked about how it could emotionally help clear and release traumas or experiences, emotions. I thought about my girls with their adoptions, right? And so I thought, okay, I want to have them zoned. So I started having them zoned, and then myself. And then I'm thinking, what happens if like something occurs in the middle of the night and like I can't call her up? And then I started realizing I don't have a job, like something to, you know, because I loved helping people and I loved just having that something different to contribute and the relationships. And so it just started to be like, this is just a natural fit. And so I decided to learn foot zoning to help like my family, myself, my, you know, extended family and friends. And then I started to realize, hey, people need this. And so that's how I got started. So to answer the question, like, what does it do? Well, it signals the very DNA to heal, regenerate, and restore. So whether it's a physical issue, chemicals we've got exposed to, or emotional traumas, the way I was taught is that from basically birth to our present condition, we have all these imprints that have, you know, happened. And the foot zoning, it's like our feet are the keyboard and our body's the computer. And so we're able to hit those signals and just signal, hey, let's clear out anything that's not in alignment with our God-given divine blueprint. And then as we clear those things out, we're able to connect with our true self, our higher self, our purpose and our mission. And we just are able to more freely act in our person mission and connect with our higher power and our gifts and live as the person we are meant to be.
So I do have a question, and I could be totally off base on this. I have no idea. But to me, after knowing you, it feels like a foot zoning is more of a calling. And can you learn it? Because I've dealt with people, I've been with people who have tried to learn it, but there's just a difference to me. Like there's a difference between, because I've done foot zoning a ton with Kristi, and there's a difference between doing that with you and doing a different type of like energy work with somebody else. When I feel like, I don't know, does that make sense? Like, I feel like it's more of a...
I think what comes to my mind is like doctors. I mean, there's going to be like all sorts of doctors. One doctor is going to seem like, oh yeah, that's definitely their calling. And another is going to be like, eh.
Yeah. So that's what it feels like. It feels like people have a calling. Like this is more your calling. Like this is what you are here to do. I guess there might be people out there. Can they learn it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And interestingly enough, I am teaching a certification course for others in September.
Okay, cool.
So yes, I am a certified coach. And that makes me think of what brings it to my mind is when I was learning, I would get these thoughts or ideas and I would say something to the instructor during class and the teacher would be like, she has a cute little Swedish accent. So she'd be like, yes, this is good. You do this and you know, and I had like an affinity towards it or just a natural ability.
So like an intuition.
Yes. And so I could look back at people in the class that could be like confused or not understanding certain things, but my brain or my spirit or both would automatically go to, well, what if you can't zone them. Like, what if they don't have feet? Well, could you do it in the book? Or could you do this? Or could, So I think my mind, my spirit has been definitely open and prepared, and it's a natural thing. I do feel it's a calling. I think we all have our unique purposes and missions and gifts and talents. In the beginning, my gifts were physical. Like I could, I'd say emotions. I could always pick up on emotions of people, and then I could help with physical things. Like if a lady had a neck that was sore and she couldn't move it for like 10 years after a car accident without moving her whole head, then after a foot zoning, she could like move it, right? And be like, wow, that was so crazy. But then after my friend passed away, she had cancer and it was all throughout her whole body. And she said to me, don't worry, I'm going to be able to do so much more on the other side. And about that same time, I was praying for what I called or believed it was called the gift of discernment, so I could better help my family, my clients. And I had this lady come up to me after I taught an emotions and essential oils class. And this lady came up to me and, I was watching her. She was doing like some emotion code where, you can kind of do some like muscle testing, and you can kind of like, clear this from this area and that from that area. If anybody isn't familiar with it, you could look up Bradley Nelson, the emotion code. He's a chiropractor. But anyway, so she was doing a little bit of that, but I could tell there was something different about her and that she had more intuition, or I thought maybe she had the gift of discernment. So I asked her, I said, do you think you have the gift of discernment? I've been kind of praying for that, but didn't know if that was okay to like ask for. And she stopped me and she looked me directly in the eye and she said, you have that gift. The angels are all around. You just need to be quiet and listen. So that was my change. That was like, I compare it to, if it was a cartoon, instead of just one light bulb, it would be like a million light bulbs. Like I felt like I literally was able to walk out that day and the next day and like everything was lighter and brighter. And I was like, wow, all I have to do is just listen. This is cool. I was a big talker, still am. But to be like, oh my gosh, to just be listen and ask questions. And so those two things, with her saying that, and then my friend passing, she was a massage therapist and she had all these things. In fact, she did something called Touch for Health with my body to balance things out before I went and had that in vitro done with my son. And so when she tells me, I'm going to be able to do more on the other side, you need to read this book called The Message. I was getting her message for me, to read this book and remember, that I'm going to be able to communicate to you, right? And so a couple months after she passes, I am thinking about her daughter, and I feel very impressed to call her daughter, but I keep forgetting. I'm busy and it's late or it's early when I'm remembering and I'm feeling bad. I'm like, I want to help your daughter. One of these nights when I'm like remembering and it's too late, I have this mental conversation, and her name is Deanna. And I was like, okay, Deanna, if this is you and Joanne, your daughter, needs me to help her, please remind me between the hours I'm awake and she's awake. And that's when I realized that they'll work with you if you give them some guidance. They'll give you guidance and you can give them little parameters or whatever. Anyway, so the very next day, I was getting ready for a client. And so I looked in my zoning binder for something. I can't even remember why, just to clarify something or to whatever. And I saw, tell Deanna about this. And so since she was into health and I was into these natural things, so there was something in the zoning class at some point I'd written a note to let her know about, right? So I'm seeing this, tell Deanna. I'm like, I see your name, that's the reminder. So I call her daughter and I'm like, hi, you've been on my... And her daughter's like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for your number. I've been cursing my mom because all while she was alive, I never needed her. And now, as far as for pain, right? And she says, and now that she's gone, my back is in so much pain. And I know, like the doctors have done everything, the chiropractors and doctors, and they want me to have surgery. But she said, I still remember word for word. She's like, but I know my mom would roll over in her grave if I had surgery. I'm like, check. So I'm like, come on over. So she came over and we did some zoning, some emotional release, whatever I was prompted to do, but we felt her mom's presence so strongly. And so that was a pivotal, changing point, because after she was fine, she never had to have surgery. She was healed, That's when I was like, okay, Deanna, if you're with her, then who's with my other clients. And that's when I started listening and paying attention. And so when we were able to meet, I think I was already prepped to be like, okay, so who's with you? What are we, like, how can we help? And I took on more of the spiritual, I think, mentor after my friend passed away. And I started opening up and remembering, hey, my brother, even with my first adoption, that was my very first experience with him. I knew he was like there and helping us from time to time, but it got real when the hardest, child, I think, it was waiting for my very first. I knew she was going to be a girl. I felt she was going to come at Christmas time, but it was just coming and going. And I just had this one day and I was just really exhausted with it all. And our twin neighbors that were 15 years old were pregnant within 1 month of each other. And here we were ready and waiting. And so I had this conversation kind of with my brother. It was like, I don't know how it works up there, but I feel like I've wearied the Lord. And so if you could pull a few strings, if you could put in a good word, if you could do anything at all to help us, please, this would be the time. And within a couple of weeks, we got the call and we got our daughter. And so we named her Emily Lynn after my brother Lynn. And so looking back, I can go back and kind of see, the angels were always there. I always had that connection, but it's over the last 13 years that it's grown as I've practiced and taken the time. I realized 14 years ago, my very first meditation, the power, I still have things written in my journal that I refer to of little visions or glimpses of future things that are happening. And so I teach people to just be still and listen. And, the angels are all around helping us. And so I think, when people do have a mission and a purpose in healing, they'll find it, it'll find them, and, it'll all come together. But
go ahead.
No,
I was going to say, that's what I think I appreciate about you. You don't tell people what's going on. Like you're not, okay, well, this is happening. This is happening. I think there's like a spiritual awakening going on where people are receiving more, I don't know what you even want to call it. Like they're receiving I feel like everybody's becoming more intuitive.
Definitely.
And so I feel like when you're working with somebody, like, especially with me, you're like, well, what do you think? What do you think? And so you let me tap into my own, rather than just saying, hey, this is what's going on. Oh, this is happening. This is happening. Yes. So I don't have to think. Like the thing I like about you, you're like, hey, so what do you feel? What do you think is going on? And then your intuition can help validate what I'm feeling.
Yeah. And that took practice too, because again, in the beginning, I was just like, oh, bam, bam, bam. Like, okay, sinuses. Okay. I've learned that you can be irritated by somebody close to you, or that's common, or anger in the liver. And so in the beginning, I would be like, okay, and then I realized, I can't remember if it was about that same time with the angels or what, but I started to realize, wait a minute, I don't want my client to be dependent on me. Yeah. And I think it was probably about the time things got a little crazy too with accepting or not accepting it as a good thing or whatever. And so I wanted to make sure that I was not the one telling people, but I was merely shining the light and letting other people, because that was my main goal. It's like, I want to teach somebody to fish, right? I don't want them to be dependent on me and have to always come. No, I want them to get their answers, because the joy and, the power of when you can connect to your own higher self and higher power. And that's what I want. And so I'm just here to shine the light. People have shined the light for me and taught me, and I'm just here to shine the light to help others get reconnected. That's why I recently changed my brand, my name, to the business name, to Illuminate You, to more powerfully reflect. I just feel like we shine the light, you illuminate you, and then you can go shine your light and help others,
So would you say that's your purpose? Does that feel like?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I feel like, my main purpose is I'm just one to go before and shine the light and help people reconnect to their true purpose. And once you're connected to your purpose, like, you're unstoppable, right? You have your purpose, you realize your power. I think a lot of people have lost hope or feel helpless or feel controlled. And I think when we really take them, whether it's through meditation or zoning or energy work or whatever, it comes to however they can connect and realize the truth of who they are and their miraculous divine power within them, that then they're unstoppable. So my purpose is to shine light and help people remember who they truly are, their true self, so they can shine and live their mission and their purpose. And I feel like we just, together, we heal, together we shine, together we raise the vibration of the earth. And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
It's really cool. Yeah.
So everybody's always like, so what happened with my back? They've got my side of the story. So I've always wondered from Kristi's side, like just with everything that happened, everything that went on, like, what is your take? Like, I've just never really asked you even about it.
Well, the interesting thing is I was at a point before Holly and I met on our trip. I was at a point where I'd been kind of told to kind of back up and focus on my children and homeschool. But then there was this part of me that was it was starting to be like, okay, is it time? Can I do a little bit more? And I was starting to feel like it was time I started to zone again. Mm-hmm. And we met, and I just had this knowing, and that's what I go for too when I teach others to just listen to those promptings, because when Holly started sharing what was going on, I just was like, oh, well, I just couldn't help, because I knew there's one part that somebody could be like, well, that sounds kind of crazy, but I was just like, well, I just can't not share. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, do you know what? And so first initially just to have the courage to be like, okay, and is it time? And I felt like it was time. And so I followed that, and that, hey, between these nutrients and essential oils and foot zoning, I think we both just felt that you would be healed. And so as I went along, like, I didn't know how long it would take, what all it would entail, but I just had this knowing. That's one of my strongest gifts, I say, is it's a knowing, and whether you call that the gift of discernment or whatever, but
Holly is
just the knowing. And so we both, right? We just knew, like, especially when you guys the doctors say we need a rod or we need a surgery. I
still remember like telling you the story, and I was like, doctors are saying like that he needs to have surgery and that there's no other way. And you would like immediately like shook your head, and I was like, see, she knows. I know. Like, why don't doctors know?
Right? Yeah. And that's the thing, is that's why I say we're our best advocate when it comes to health. You knew, really it wasn't the right answer. And so he aligned us. And so I just coming into it, I knew that there were things to be done. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I didn't know, everybody's different, but I just knew you'd be healed. And so I was kind of, shocked, like when the final, the actual healing occurred. I was like, well, it's like, Mom, my services are no longer needed. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. But that was a first for me as far as that big. I mean, I'd experienced my friend's, daughter and that, but this was, this was another level. And so I was just like, really, honestly, I didn't know kind of what to do. And that's with that, I was excited, but I was just really in awe, And so from my perspective, I just knew you'd be healed, just like Holly, but I just didn't know how and when. And
interesting how all the pieces just kind of fell into place. Like, Holly, I don't even know if we talked about this, how you guys how she went to Africa. Like, I don't know if we've talked about that on the podcast, how when they thought I still had cancer, and you're like, oh, I got to go to Africa, and spend $10,000 that we don't have. And I was like, are you insane? And it was just this feeling like the Holly had to go. And it was obviously to meet you, and so I'm just like, man. And then I start thinking, I was like, they both live in Utah. Like, is there no other way that we could put these two together, But I'm sure there was other reasons for it, like the boys had a great time doing humanitarian work and stuff. I learned
a lot more just being there. There was a lot of other people. And
there's so many. So you bring up a good point though, because when we're impressed or inspired to do one thing, there's sometimes so many answers. Because when I was impressed to go, if you remember my side of it, I had a daughter who was struggling with kind of some anxiety and depression. And so I felt like the answer, as I prayed on how to help her, was to go take her to get outside of herself to like Africa. She's half African American, and I wanted her to see it wasn't just a white world we're living in, but I just felt like, okay, there could have been a lot of answers. I could have just had some other modality or some other doctor, but the answer for my daughter was to go to Africa. And then I happened to mention it at this event, where, hey, does anybody, because I was having all these good connections and stuff. And I was like, hey, does anybody happen to have any connections with Africa? And this person sitting next to me was like, she's leaving in 3 weeks. And so that was, she's turned out to be a great friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours. But, so the interesting thing is my daughter and her son connected, and they're probably going to, get married. They're, just a couple years away from marriage. So
it's crazy. It's interesting when you get these little small revelations or whatever they are, if you pursue them, how many amazing things can come from it. Like if Holly was just like, no, I can't go to Africa, like who knows where we'd be right now.
Right.
You know, and that was a big deal, but she was very obedient.
Exactly.
And so it just changed the course of our life.
Yeah. I think, like open to possibilities and like knowing, but also not knowing at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Knowing something good was going to happen, not knowing what was going to happen.
Exactly. It's taking that step. It's like, we don't have to, sometimes we think we need to, but we don't have to know all the steps or all the reasons or all the things. We just need that one step, and we just need to take that courage and, you know, do that first action, that first step. And then the next will unveil itself. Right. And then the next, and then sometimes we can look back and be like, oh my gosh, I see all the reasons now, you know, but it's just that courage.
Why I need to do it.
Yeah. I always say I'm because I don't know much about foot zoning, even though I've done it a ton of times. Like, I don't know what's going on. And so I would always say, I'm like, I don't know what brought upon the healing. I really don't. Because people have asked me, they're like, well, didn't you get blessings and didn't people pray for you? And all these, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I did. They're like, so you think it was just foot zoning? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So I believe the foot zoning put me like I said, I don't know if it's foot zoning or it was you. That's why I call you a spiritual mentor, because I felt like every time you came over, you would like lift my spirits up. And so I'm like, I have no idea how I got to the point where I did. I really don't. I honestly don't care. Like I you know, the amazing things happen, but so that's why I was just like, if people are always like, if I do foot zoning, can amazing things happen? I'm like, maybe, I don't know. I have no idea, but try it. Like, why not? And so there's just so many different, and there's how many different types of zoning or zonings are there? There's a million.
So there's the foot zoning. That's the main, you know, foot zoning. There's back zoning. That's more the emotional body. It can still do physical things. Like say somebody had cysts in their, you know, on their ovaries or uterus or something that can clear deeper that way, but there's different aspects. So there's foot zoning, there's back zoning, the face zoning, mental body, hormone balancing. It's like a little facelift if people want to stay young. But so that's more the mental body, what's on the thoughts and mind and anxiety hormones. And then hand zoning. Hand zoning, I don't even know if we've actually done the hand zoning, but I've been thinking that's kind of next for you guys. Hand zoning, I don't actually do the zoning on your hand, but I use my hands to hold points and the energy flows. And the hand zoning is actually more of the spiritual aspect. So we have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspect, but the foot zoning is the most commonly used. It's the way to just kind of help anchor and ground everything and come through. And it's usually a natural, easy one, you know, don't have to have, you know, massage tables and other things and stuff. And then there's a lot of people that have taken the foot zoning that came over from Charles Erstall through usually Katrine or Bloom. There's one other person that learned, but a lot of people have taken that, and sometimes they'll add different things like, they'll do it with the crystal instead of their knuckle, or they'll do things. And I know there's good intentions. And so whatever good intentions people have, I think it'll still be good. But I just like to encourage people, if anybody ever wants to learn it from the source, like Katrine or an instructor that works with Katrine like me or somebody else, because I kind of feel like, I don't know, for lack of a better comparison, it's like the Bible through translation, a little parts have been lost over, you know, the years. And so that's like the zoning, it's her copyrighted material. And she's the one that went back and like, she developed the DNA code and went on to do face and back and hand zoning. So I feel like she's the expert. And so some of these people that have broken off and done their own thing, they might still be amazing and do good things, but I feel like she's kind of just the true source as far as the, you know, ongoing things too. She'll have conferences and she'll add to things. I went and figured out at the last conference, you can hit the psoas muscle better for relief. So that was cool, you know? So it's, I don't know, there's lots of good things out there, but I like this, you know, without the crystals and without, because if I did it with a crystal, I wouldn't be able, even though I like crystals and their properties, but I wouldn't be able to feel what I can feel with my knuckle. Right. Yeah. And that's what helps me to know things too. Anyways.
Yeah.
And you also sell doTERRA, right? And essential oils, because you use essential oils a lot in your zoning.
Yeah. I feel like they work together. I feel like what we're doing and kind of to come back to like, you don't know what happened, just that it helped you, right? So it's about raising the vibration, right? And so each time the zoning is clearing things out, it's raising your vibration so your body can heal, right? So whether it's emotional or physical or chemical. So that's like the essential oils. They can get in and they can work with the body. I was trained to use them, on the bottom of the foot, and then throughout, to encourage the clients to use them as needed to support their body. And I found doTERRA really early on, actually at my graduation class in Montana. A lady that was from North Ogden came, and we're like 15 minutes apart from each other, but she was like, hey, try this peppermint. I breathed that in and I immediately could recognize this quality is different than anything out there. And so I was drawn to doTERRA because they do test 54 different tests per each batch to make sure its quality is just high. So that vibration is going to, be the best to help interact with the body and support the body. I know it's not just about essential oils, though. One thing I love about doTERRA is they have the nutrients, they have the micronutrients. Their best selling product is actually their supplements. So people notice more, energy, more decrease in inflammation, more energy, all the good things. And so I feel like the clients that I can see that do the best with the progress, and that's one thing I think you were doing at that time, is you were using the nutrients, right? You were using the oils. We were trying to hit it from all sides to decrease inflammation and support you so you could heal. It did so happen that you came into more of your spiritual gifts too, and it helped you spiritually. But I feel like it all works together, right? The physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it all works together. And if we aren't supporting all, then it's kind of just off, right?
Yeah.
But if we just start to support, then one influences the other, and it all comes into alignment. So that's, I love the nutrients and essential oils to help raise the vibration, support the body's, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. There's something powerful. I still don't know all how the oils do it, but I know sometimes when I breathe it in, or when I see somebody breathe it in, I was just teaching a class of estheticians, and we were passing around the adaptive blend, and it has things like lavender and magnolia and wild orange, and just a powerful blend of oils for anxiety or anxious feelings and stress and overwhelm. And as a lady was breathing it, she stopped and she said, wait a minute, I can feel I normally breathe so quickly and I get all anxious, but just breathing this, I feel it slowing my breathing. And she's talking and she's like, and it's making me want to cry. So we had the opportunity to talk about how when you're breathing that in, it's getting into the limbic system, and then that's calming down your whole body. And so, it can open your airways, it can calm you. And we started to talk a little bit about, how sometimes we want to release emotions when we breathe in an oil. It's not just about, foo-foo stuff. It just aromatic, smells good. It's actually doing releasing of past emotions in the body and things like that. And so we actually got to talk a little bit about energy work and releasing some emotions in that class. And I'm going back to teach a full class on just energy work. But it's cool to see those experiences when people for the first time try the oils. Yeah. And there's one time a lady breathed in the Melissa. It showed up on a scan. I do a biofeedback scan for those people who want the more science parts, right? And so it showed up on her scan. And so she took a drop, breathed it in, and she was like, wow. And she just started crying, just tears. And so I just know, just kind of like zoning, it has the ability to help clear out, emotions and traumas and uplift and raise that vibration. And I think, especially as you referred to, people are coming into more and more of their gifts and it's like their time to let things go, and it's happening fast. And so oils are a great way to just release and shift and help heal so people can get on with what they're meant to do here.
Yeah.
So
definitely feel like there's a spiritual awakening going on.
Yeah. So, I was just going to say, so if any of you watching or listening want, to get in touch with Kristi and get some oils, then we'll have all of her information
info down in the description.
Yep. Down in the description, and you can contact her. And
if you want to do oils, you're doing classes on foot zoning?
Yeah, there's certification classes starting in a few months. And and I'll be doing them a couple times a year.
Will you do those online or just in person?
Those there online is kind of coming, but there's a definite in person, some things you need to do to be able to make sure people are doing things right. So for right now, it'll be in person. I teach the in-between ones. The main lady, Katri, will teach the first and the last still to, just make sure that integrity is there. I just love her and what she has to offer, and I just go along and help. So
Very cool.
Yep.
That's
very
great.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for coming. And we always love hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, you just have so much information and just make everyone feel better around you.
Oh.
So
Pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for coming out. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Finally got her.
Thank you.
We've been trying to get her on this for a couple months. She's so busy. So
if you have any questions or comments, write them down below. You can, of course, get in touch with her if you have anything you need to know. And thank you so much for watching Maeband.
See ya.
Bye.